Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans ce premier épisode de la nouvelle saison du Digital Download. Oops. Good afternoon, good morning and good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news and strategy radio network. Today on the Digital Download, we are challenging the relentless pressure to constantly churn out content. For many business owners, marketing has become a content treadmill that leads to burnout and diminishing returns. We have a special guest, Kate Llewellyn, to help us with the discussion. As a content writer and consultant and the head clubber for the Content Club, Kate's mission is to help business owners plan with purpose and create content with confidence. But before we bring Kate on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the Digital Download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. Tim, would you like to kick us off, please?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Digital Download. And my name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. And I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Tracy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tracy Borson, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, a proud partner of DLA Ignite. And I'm super excited to be back. It has been a long time, I feel like, since I've been in the conversation with you lovely folks. So always excited to bring my authentic marketing hat to the conversation. And I have many thoughts on content, as I'm sure all of us do.
We're so glad you joined us today, Tracy. Adam?
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner and co-founder of DLA Ignite. And Tracy, you didn't say you were coming to the UK to see us.
I am.
Yeah, which we're really excited about.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. And as I said this week, on the Digital Download, we speak with Kate. While the common advice is to post more and be everywhere, this approach can often dilute your message and drain your energy. Kate will reveal how focusing on confidence and purpose rather than volume can make your marketing not only more effective, but also more enjoyable. Let's bring on. Whoops, let me do that. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Super excited to talk about this topic.
Excellent. Well, Kate, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and what led you where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Kate Llewellyn and I run the content consultancy. And as part of that, I've been working as a professional copywriter and content writer for primarily more websites, blogs, and helping people with the world of SEO. And then I also developed my own membership where I help small business owners to create their own content. And as has already been said, we plan with purpose and we create content with confidence. And we do that because it's something that, any networking event, any business event I've been to, most people, you mention the word marketing, you mention the word social media, and you get that lovely drop the shoulders. And I hate that. That really makes me sad. And I want people to feel excited about talking about their businesses, passionate, and therefore the content they create, reflects all of that. Rather than, as you've mentioned, my favorite term, it becomes a horrible treadmill, it becomes a chore, it becomes a bit of a trudge.
Excellent, Kate. Thank you so much for that intro. Let's kick things off and let's start with a foundational question. Why is the always be posting strategy failing businesses?
So I should jump straight in with, I think the problem is that we aren't being strategic enough if our answer to like how much you post or how much content you need to create is just more and more. I think it's so easy that we end up focusing more on the creation and less on the why. Why are we actually doing this? What are we trying to achieve? And also, with the world we live in now, I think it's really easy to slip into creating very generic content. You're bored, therefore your audience is probably bored. And yeah, we just end up adding to the noise. We're not actually adding any value, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to like you, Kate. Kate and I are gonna be best friends
Can I
later.
Can I jump in here and ask a question? Because I think that everyone in the audience will be. I think it's fair to say that if you never publish any content, that's not enough. And if you publish content and it's like staring down the barrel of a machine gun, that's too much. So, we have worked with organizations, even kind of quite well-respected marketers within those organizations, that have been, I guess, somewhat delusional with their view of content. They've said things like, I don't like to publish more than once every couple of months because I want my audience to be kind of waiting for my content, and then they'll really engage with it. And we're like, yeah, that's a nice dream, but the fact is that if you don't post for a couple of months, they've forgotten who on earth you are. And equally, and in fairness, it may be because I unfollow these people, or it may be because there are not so many of them. But there used to be people that you would connect with on LinkedIn that almost had like an if that then this kind of thing going on, where they would automatically repost stuff from people and businesses, and they'd be posting every 30 minutes. And sometimes you'd log in and you just go, oh my God, all I see is this bloke, and he's just everywhere. And but there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? And once a month is not enough. Once every 15 minutes is too much. So what is an appropriate amount of content, do you think?
Sorry, you slightly stole that, but I think it was, were you sort of asking how do you figure out that perfect amount?
Yeah. So yeah. What's the starting point? What's a reasonable order of magnitude for content?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say to be, and it is a cop out. It is the how long is a piece of string sort of answer. But so first of all, it is a completely unique thing to you and your business, because they're the two things that matter the most, right? Because that's what, everyone will have. I think the other thing to say is where you post, which social media platforms you choose, how much also makes a difference. So again, it comes back to you. What do you enjoy? What do you like creating? What do you need to be doing? And also in business, how much do you need to sell? How big an audience do you need? All of those kind of they're the more sort of foundational factors from that point of view. The next thing, and I'd love to see if this is a bit controversial, but if you really don't know, just pick something. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but I always recommend for my content clubbers, we have what we call our minimum content commitment. And this is the amount of content that you as a business owner, or you as the business, if you are outsourcing, can commit to creating every single, and I break it down by sort of week, month, quarter, and annually. What can you create? And what can you stick to regardless of what goes wrong, right? Regardless of when things, aren't quite working out, but also when maybe you are a little bit quieter, what can you do? Now, this is a minimum. You can increase and you can go down. But when you've got that line in the sand, that is gold, because you can then start to test and measure. You can reflect. You can go, yeah, this is really working. Sales are, going well. Or hang on a minute, actually, we're really not getting either the leads or the sales, the purpose. What were you trying to do? We weren't getting what we expected. What's really nice with that is going back to the, we don't want to be posting so much that our audience is bored and the content's getting a bit drab. Is that actually sometimes we hit this beautiful sweet spot where we go, do you know what? Our minimum content commitment is actually a little bit high. I think we might bring it down a little bit. And for most business owners, I reckon that's music to your ears, right? You can do less and still achieve the same.
Kate, can I jump in here? Because this also, one of the things that I hear a lot is this concept of consistency. And I think very commonly people confuse consistency with frequency. So what we're talking about right now is frequency of posting. How often I post. I post it every day. I post once a week. And I'm with you, right? Like, I'm a big fan of creating a framework, but sometimes you have a bad day and you don't post and it's fine. But like, how have you heard an easy way to describe to people the difference between consistency and frequency that we could share with our audience?
Yeah, sure. So to pick up, first of all, I think absolutely the whole frequency thing, and this is why it is the minimum content commitment, because exactly that, you're like, and some people for that, generally that is like a post once a week and an email once a month or something, and that, you know, and that is absolutely fine. And the idea behind that is exactly what you said, Tracy, to pick up on it, is that on that day where you think, oh, actually, yeah, I've got loads to say, you go for it. This is not to say you can't do more than this. As I say, it's your absolute minimum. Flip side, we get rid of those feelings of guilt and there's really not good enough and I haven't done enough by, you know, keeping to our absolute minimum. To come back to the consistency thing, yes, I completely agree with you. So I very much make consistency is, to me, is with my content writer hat on, is way more about brand and voice and tone and style of content and things like that. And I think, you know, we can definitely talk about that too all day, but yeah, that is a different side of it. So that, yeah, you're not only sticking to that minimum content commitment, but you're, again, it comes back to producing content that you care about, that has a purpose, that has this kind of sort of single narrative, I suppose. I often talk to people about adopting themes and adopting goals, because again, it's like, what do we want our content to achieve for our business? And so doing that with a certain element of consistency is the kind of difference I would sort of pull upon, I suppose. Does that make sense?
We've got a comment from the audience, from Mark, who says, too much posting, oversharing, too little. Mysterious legend.
I like that.
I mean, there's probably some people out there who desire
you,
to
Mark.
be a mysterious legend.
Yeah, and actually I was about to say that, to me, that's a tad positive. I think too little equals, have you gone out of business, ? That's what I always worry about. You know, people who have shared a lot and then suddenly you go and they've disappeared off the face of the earth. I think, did they change job or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is, and one of the things that we kind of we try to drill into people is that content is the only vehicle you have to constantly stay front of mind with people. So, you know, you build a network, you wave at people in your network, and so that they start to notice you, and then you cannot keep messaging them. You know, it's like if I think there might be an opportunity for me to sell you something, how often can I phone you for a chat? Once a year, once every 6 months, once a quarter, once a week, every day, twice a day, you know,
Every hour.
yeah, you know, and obviously the closer together I make those calls, the more likely you are for me to phone you at the point when you're ready to make a purchasing decision, but equally the more likely you are to block me. And content is the only vehicle, and I think that often this don't post too much, and I know that you've already said, you know, there's a balance to be struck, but this don't post too much is an excuse for people not to create content. You know, so this whole kind of I don't like creating content, I don't consider myself to be a writer, I'm not very good at articulating things, I'm a bit shy, and that is excused by saying, I don't want to flood my audience with this, I don't want to overshare stuff. And actually, you're unlikely to. You know, if you've got a day job, you're unlikely to create too much content in reality, I suspect.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. And actually, I think, you know, to let us off the hook a little bit, as long as with the caveats of quality and consistency and on brand and on message and on all of that. Yeah, absolutely. I don't, you know, there is an argument that more is more. You can do more, and I think, you know, that there's no harm in that, but as you said, it's got to be with purpose, right? It's got to have a goal in mind. Like you've said, this is the giving people a phone call is a great example. Yeah, all right, you can phone me every day, but why? You know, isn't it? It's that's the thing. It's about the purpose. It's about, for me, I get people to do a really, really basic little task, which is they write out all of the content they create, the marketing activities they do, and I get them to sit on a matrix, and this can totally be gut feel of what do you enjoy and what's effective. And what we want to do is loads of the stuff that both is enjoyable or For some, I know they only get as far as palatable. I get that. But equally, feels effective. And we look at that and we look at, what is working actually working for people. Because I think the other thing that and I sort of mentioned again, the treadmill, is that a lot of people create a lot of content all of the time without being effective, right? Without actually seeing any results. And that does that is a waste of time when we're saying, the opposite of the cop out in a way, but that is just, for creating content for the sake of it. What's the point? And more importantly, when are you stopping to reflect on that effectiveness? Because again, it is a treadmill. We do get stuck on it. We, as Tracy, I'm sure you've had as marketers, like you said, people ask all the time, how much content should I create? They want numbers, they want frequency, and then they'll come back to me and say, well, Kate, someone told me to post 5 times a day, so I posted 5 times a day. And again, it's the, okay, what happened?
And how did that work for you?
I think Gary V's
Exactly.
actually said post every day or something like that. I mean,
sorry, Tim.
I
I think Gary V said something like post every day or something, I can't remember what it
Yeah, and Alex, I'd just be like, why? Why? What happened? Did it work for you? Did it not? Did it help you reach your goal? I always love the example of people saying to me, that they've done all this stuff, blah blah blah, and they've now got 10,000 followers or something, and I'm like, brilliant! And how many extra sales? And they go 2, and you're like, was that worth it? Was that what you wanted? Whereas flip side, you talk to somebody and they go, well, do you know what? I posted a bit like this and I went to this networking event, or I made that phone call, like you were saying, and I made 2 sales as well. Well, again, you need to look and think, right, what is right for my business? What are the goals? Is it a visibility exercise? Is it a sales opportunity? What are we trying to achieve? And is the content we're creating helping us to reach that goal? Because one of the things, my background is very much about marketing and sales are intricately linked, right? That's why we're doing it. It's about hopefully, growing our businesses and growing our bottom line.
Someone should write a book about that, Tim, shouldn't they?
They should.
Yeah, so an interesting thing is that I think that there's been a big shift in how audiences consume content.
Yeah.
And once upon a time, you would publish something and you would say, I did this post, advert, campaign, whatever, and it generated 50 phone calls. And now what happens is you run this campaign, advert, whatever, and it generates no phone calls, ever. And I think that people are still in this, certainly with content, they're still in this belief system that if I do 10 pieces of content, that equals 2 phone calls, which equals 1 client. And the reality is that 10 pieces of content will not generate inbound phone calls, but it may well generate interactions, which you can then turn into outbound things. And the challenge here is how much of your time do you spend creating content, and how much of your time do you spend sweeping up the things that fall out of the content that you have created? And doing one without the other is a waste of time.
Yeah. 100%. So I talk to people a lot about, we call it the sort of content marketing pathway, and exactly that. It's like moving people along from maybe that like that they gave you, that, the first comment they finally made on your post, etc. And actually, even with email content, I often say to people, I love when people come to me and tell me about their open rates and their click rates. And I say, oh, that, Tracy's, I can feel it. But I think, Adam and Tim are the same, and I'm like, oh, that's, great. And who were those people? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And you're like, they're your leads. They are, like we've said before about the waving and giving people, they're the people that are engaging in that way. They're on the opening. What do they click on? Who are they? And have you, as you've said, now reached out and got in touch? And, oh, no, just sent another email.
I had this conversation with somebody yesterday who was like, oh, you're a marketer. What's a good email open rate? And I'm like, I can answer your question, but that's not really the right question.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that, and I think, that is something that is really underrated with content is, a lot of content it is lead generation, right? There are leads there to be found. Who is liking, who is commenting, who is opening emails, who is clicking, whatever it might be. And sometimes we need to draw that out as well. If you're blogging or something, making sure you're asking questions, getting those comments. So yeah, I absolutely, it's about moving people along the pathway. And with that content marketing pathway, I often talk about creating different types of content for those different elements, so that it's not always just about the kind of visibility education element of a social media post. It might need to be a direct message or a first follow-up call, a script even. We do need content for all elements of that, effectively our customer journey or our sales journey.
I'd like to talk, Kate, about a little bit about the lack of confidence, because you mentioned that in the introduction. How is the lack of confidence, not the lack of ideas, the real barrier to a great content?
So this comes from, I've been running my membership, the Content Club, for nearly 4 years. And what I found was that there were some people that would come in and we run these planning sessions and they create beautiful plans and they'd go off and hopefully through my clinics, the accountability sessions, they would create all of that content that they planned. But I had two other groups of people. I had groups of people that would come to the planning sessions, they'd create beautiful plans, and then very, very little, if any, of this content was coming to fruition. So when we checked in, it was like, oh no, I didn't do that and I didn't do this. Or there even were some people who were really genuinely quite afraid of coming to the planning session. The thought of having to commit to putting down, as you've said, actually, about like having ideas. And what I realized when I started talking to them and trying to unpick it, it always came back to, very broadly, but this sense of confidence. So those who'd planned loads in the planning stages, they were really excited and it seemed amazing. But when it actually came to creating that content, there was those voices in the head, often, the limiting beliefs, the who am I to say this, oh, I'm no different than anyone else. I've got nothing new to say. My product, blah, blah, blah. Oh, a competitor has just put something out and I'm no. So that kind of, very, very sad, probably completely untrue, because it's those people who are very self-aware that often, are the best business owners. And then there was other two things as well. There was either a little knowledge gap, and I think Adam touched about, things change all the time. Yeah, algorithms change, best practice changes. So there's those knowledge gaps that were stopping people publishing the content that they wanted or doing a strategy that they wanted to adopt. And then finally, what I call the kind of lack of confidence in the business, in that, like, there's something about their business that they classic being kind of pricing, or, as I say, the extent of what they could offer, sort of over-promising, under-delivering, which again, in most cases was utterly not true, but that's their kind of feelings. So it was this lack of confidence. So it then also morphs into people have these brilliant ideas, but what happens is the ideas get diluted. So they often have the idea, but they go, I'm going to make this amazing. I'm going to record this video. I'm going to say this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this thought leader piece. But they don't. They kind of put this brilliant idea down, don't they? And they sort of step away slowly, and then they kind of edit it a bit down, a bit further, and it just becomes this very sort of limp and not very impactful piece of content anymore. And it doesn't engage their audiences in the way it should. It doesn't attract people in the way that the original idea would. And that, to answer your question, that is where confidence in your content, in what you have to say, and coming back again, in why you're saying it, what you want it to achieve for you, for your business, is just, to me, it's just so important.
Well, and I think one of the things I see, just to add on to that, is that takes longer. Like, if you're in inspiration and you write a post and you send it out, it takes like 5 minutes. But if you write down the idea and then you make the video and then you edit the video. I had a client who edited a video 150 times. And I was like, you will never do that again. How long did that take? And you took all of the spark out of it. So now it's not
spark out of it,
longer to do it.
And that's why we're live, by the way.
Yeah, but actually,
Yeah.
that is such a good point. It is exactly that. It loses its spark. And I think we've already mentioned about how we are really experienced consumers of content now. So you feel the kind of behind that piece of content, the hard work, the hardship, the spark that was lost. Whereas exactly, if you've got great content ideas, you know what you're saying, why you're saying it, you create it, you hit post, I think that is the content that lands so much more often.
We have a great comment from
your
from
group.
Kevin in the audience. Just one sec, Adam. When writing content, it's important to think about respecting people's time. I think that's a great one, really.
And Kevin says the mind shift for writers need to go from selling to solving. Because when I look at LinkedIn, most of it is rubbish. And so there's people out there spending millions, probably billions of dollars on content, which is unreadable. Why do they do that? What a waste of time.
Because someone told them that they should.
Yeah, and isn't that the classic? What you should do, what you must do. But again, I'd say to anyone, reflect. It doesn't take actually that long to look at your analytics, to dive down a bit deeper. Is this actually working? Is this doing what we wanted it to do? And most importantly, if you didn't decide before you started, whatever it is, whether your monthly plan or your whole annual content strategy, if you haven't decided what you wanted your content to actually help you do, then go back and do that first, and then we can obviously then you can judge whether it's working or not. Sorry, I think you.
I'm not sure that people do that, Kate, because
no, they don't.
When I go look at LinkedIn, it will be case study after case study after case study, and what we know about case studies is they all say, "Buy my product because we're great." Nobody has ever written a case study that says my product is rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know that case studies will say we're great, so we don't read them.
Yep.
So people are basically creating all this stuff about case studies, and nobody's reading it because we know what it's going to say. But
Tim, we just need to create more case studies. Then
we need more case studies, because if people have more case studies, they'd buy more. Come on.
Yeah. And we can't name the client, but we don't need to name the client. We can just say a client of ours, and then because people will believe that.
A client of ours says we're great and you should buy our product.
But
wow, isn't that amazing?
My question to you, Kate, was going to be this. So you run your content workshop, and people map out exactly what they want to say, and then they make a commitment to you. I'm going to produce one piece of content every single day, and that's fine because I'm really good at writing stuff now. And then you come back a month later and you say, so how many pieces of content have you produced, Tim? And Tim says 2. And you said, but you told me you were going to do one. Well, we got really busy and we did this, and I had to clean my desk.
I was in meetings.
Yeah. So how do we get people to move from that place of? I think this is a really great idea, because the thing about content is that there's no argument for not producing your content. You say to people, it gives you your own voice to talk to a global audience about what it is that you do and what matters and the value that you add. And it doesn't cost you anything to do it, so except your time. So that's something, and they all go, yeah, absolutely, I'm definitely going to get on this. And then they don't. Mm-hmm. So what, in your experience, is the trigger to get somebody from, I think this is a great idea, Kate, thanks, to, I think this is a great idea, and now I'm actually doing it? Because the analytics and the feedback and the engagement that you get and the sales opportunities that all of that comes after you've done the posting. So when I've done 2 posts this month, not surprisingly, there's not a lot of data to work out what works and what doesn't.
Yep.
So how do you push people over that precipice?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I think the very first thing we do actually in the session itself is we actually look back at the past month or the past quarter. And funnily enough, I had this really revolutionary technique where you tick what you did and you cross what you didn't. And I know, out there, all this world of AI, and Kate came up with this, but genuinely, genuinely. So the first thing is to actually identify literally what you did do and what you didn't. And there's no guilt. There's no, I don't come around, grade you or anything. But it starts to make people see, because I think, first of all, it's funny you say about they posted twice. It's amazing how people don't actually know. I know that sounds weird, but you sort of say to people, did you do? Oh, yeah, we did the plan. We did most of it. I missed a couple. And like I say, it's not until they really stop and reflect. So that's the first thing. And then we do look at what they did produce. Why were those 2 posts done? And it might be because they'd scheduled them in on a Sunday night with a glass of wine. I've had that one before. They were like, I just sat there and I did it. So there's something about like making it more relaxed, something, or
That's the French.
yeah, fine. French jeans, that might be what it is. Or flip side, looking at all the stuff they didn't do. And as as sort of mentioned, it often, what is it? Well, I set myself that I was going to record a video every Monday, but it turns out they hate video, or they can create a video, but they didn't like it because it wasn't polished and they wanted to edit it. So we really do break down the different types of content that they wanted created and what are the individual barriers. And I know that's then hard to obviously answer, but individually, without speaking to people individually, but it's about that. It's about really taking a moment and go, what was going on there? And as you said, busy is always an answer, too busy. Well, then maybe you overcommitted to too much content. That's fine. Let's get to, let's lower the amount that you were planning to do. The other one is looking at strategies. Can we reuse and repurpose if it's a time thing? What have you got there? Is it time to outsource? There might be something to be said in that. And then the final one is always what I've mentioned. Is it nothing really to do with time and energy, but it is to do with a confidence issue, a technological barrier, or even just that you don't really believe in that content that you wanted to create because you don't know, again, why you're creating it, because maybe the mindset you mentioned, I got 2 calls still from my 2, so that's all I, and so it's right, okay, fine. So yeah, you aren't believing in the power of what your content is trying to do for you. So it's just, it's really unwrapping that. And as I say, it always starts with just genuinely comparing what you planned and what you actually achieved and didn't achieve. And looking at that, really, taking a little bit of the emotion out of it and just looking at what the barriers were.
I think this is also interesting because it speaks to the power of the visibility, which a lot of people don't have. But also, when you have a coach that can ask you questions about these things, they tend to ask you questions that you wouldn't ask yourself. And so like one of the things I see really commonly when people have said they're going to post a lot of content, but they don't post a lot of content and they actually have gotten busy. I got a client contract and then it's a full-time contract. So I have to work on this full time. Their belief about content is that I will use content when I need to get a contract.
Yeah.
But then I don't have a pathway. I don't have a funnel. And we've talked about a whole bunch of the pieces to that earlier in this conversation. But then we're starting from scratch every time. So you can start from scratch every time. I'm not here to tell you, but this is also important to understand that based on your belief, this is how you will approach your content. If that could give you false information about the length of sales cycles as well, because I'm not doing it consistently. So I don't have consistent business. And then I have to go chasing business. Now I'm chasing with my content. And like a lot of these things end up being connected because of the mindset. And it's very difficult. I always say this is why just have coaches, right? And like you can't see it yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you do. You need, like say, you need that help to reflect. And actually, it's a little bit as well of like, yes, when people are, people say to me like, oh, I'm really busy, I don't need to advertise. I always think, wow, what are Coca-Cola and McDonald's doing then? Because, all right, let's not talk about market share, but you know what I mean? Like they sell, if they do, wow, it's all right, we're selling a few, we won't worry about advertising anymore, we don't need to. You don't, do you? We do need to keep going. And actually picking up on the comment that was up on the stream a minute about going from the selling to solving, so then you go, maybe if you are busy and you don't want to sell right now because you've got that huge contract and the thought of being inundated with lots more calls, then go make the purpose of your content exactly to educate, to stay visible, to know that people are there, and we will still invite those conversations with your right clients at the right time. I really believe that. So yeah, it's about exactly switching mindset sometimes, just to go, okay, yeah, I know what I'm doing with this content. I know why I'm doing it, because yeah, it's not necessarily to get a brand new contract right at this minute, but it's to keep me front of mind. It's to show my expertise. It's to, you know, add something valuable for my audience.
So Peter T. Britton has made a great comment.
Exactly.
I think the most underused content form is commenting on another post, not just I agree, but additional detail or a supporting contrary position. Then start a discussion with those who like or comment on your comment.
I adore that. So one of the things I say to people who hate, you know, who come to me and just, I hate creating content, I don't want to do it, is I say, fine, to start with, don't worry. Let's get you enjoying the platforms that you're on. And, you know, something like LinkedIn, curate your newsfeed so that it becomes really educational, really interesting. And that might take some work. As you said earlier, like stuff on, you don't have to settle for that. Unfollow people. You don't even have to disconnect with them. You know, unfollow them and create a newsfeed that's really interesting. Because the more you do that, the more likely, exactly, that you are to comment. You've got something interesting to say because they're, you know, they're interesting to you. As sorry, was it Mark? No, who? Sorry, no. You can then end up discussing and finding new connections because those other people that are commenting are probably of interest. And interestingly, when you take a little bit more time to engage on your chosen platforms, I think the content ideas start to flow more naturally. And it might just start that all you start with is a little repost of something that you thought was really interesting with a caption that says, you know, I thought this was interesting and this is why. And then it develops into your own content. And I think we can, you know, I think we can learn a lot by you know, absorbing, reading, taking the time to read other bits of content that do interest us.
I think you make a really great point, Kate, about curating your network. One of the things I talk about a lot is like the inputs. A piece of content is output, but what are the inputs that help us create meaningful output? And if we're on any platform and we're just like, oh, I hate being here.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to be creating from your like ideal energy. And then I also say like, oh, there's so much nonsense on LinkedIn is just an echo chamber, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, there's like 1 billion people on LinkedIn. How many of them are you connected to? 500? Okay, you might be connected to the wrong 500 people, but there's probably lots of really interesting, curious, thoughtful people out there. Like, go pick the weeds in your network, man. Like you said, unfollow them, find the people. If you have good friends, like, who do they follow, right? Like, who inspires you? People are, I mean, the people I talk to are constantly talking about, they read this book and blah, blah, blah. Like, who else has read that book, right? Like, this is not, it's not that complicated. It just takes intention. Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at their garden and they're like, I don't want to deal with those weeds. And you're like, okay, but then you're probably not going to have a lot of flowers either. So as long as you understand that, then we're all good.
Yeah. No, and actually, you know, I bring it in from a kind of mental health perspective as well. You know, if you're, you said, if you're opening up your app and you're seeing and it makes you feel like, no, don't do that to yourself. This is your social media is a tool, right? So we have a certain element of control. I really believe that. I mean, you know, the sad truth is, and I say this after careful who's watching, but I don't think any board member of Meta or LinkedIn sit around and sort of say, how can we help like small business owners to make money? Unfortunately, they think, how can we make money? What's good in it for us? So, you know, keep that kind of mindset that it is a tool. So use it your way. So curate it, you know, like I said, to be something that's interesting, where, you know, where you want to hang out. Exactly what you said, Tracy. If you're having fun, if you're enjoying yourself, then you're more likely to be able to, like, even commenting, but also creating content in a way. And I think the worst time wasting thing to do with content is to dump and run. If you just create a post and then disappear, you know, they're called social networks. I don't think any algorithm takes kindly to that. Sadly, you can't, you know, you can create it, but whether anyone sees it is probably, you know, unlikely. So, you know, it's in a way, it's probably better to spend your time engaging and getting to know that platform and curating it in a way that you like to hang out. And hopefully you'll find, you know, your audience there as well. And you will have some great conversations and you will meet people, and opportunities like this will come along, you know, because you're there and you're interacting. So I think, yeah, if we can put more of a positive spin on the platforms we're using as a tool for us, it's such a nice place.
So Kate, I got a question for you. One of our clients said this, and she said it's probably now maybe even 5 years ago. She said that the days of taking a piece of content and throwing it into a bunch of strangers is over. And that's kind of, I kind of got that. You inspired me from your dump and run, which was kind of like we seem to have a lot of people out there that will throw their piece of content out there, and they could be dump and run, but ultimately they're throwing their content into a bunch of strangers. Is the network important as well when you're looking at your content?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that in two ways. So first of all, you know, who are you connected with? You know, who are you making connections with? Are you accepting any old connection requests from everyone? You know, what's the point? Absolutely. You know, and you should be curating, you know, not just that newsfeed, but your network. Who are the people in there? It's completely under your control. I find it's quite funny. People say, oh no, I have to accept. No, you don't. You have to accept. It's just like you don't have to walk into a room of a networking event and talk to everyone. You know, you get to choose. So yeah, 100%. And then also when it comes to content creation, I am very much, you know, choose one person to speak to. Who is this content for? You know, which ideal client, or even, like I say, single person. I used to work in book publishing, and I had so many lovely, you know, authors would come to me and say, oh, this book is for everyone. This book is going to be brilliant, you know, and you just be like, that's great, but let's maybe write it for just a very small audience, even a very small, you know, an individual, because actually you'll get a much better book, which might still sell in its millions. It's never about that. It's never about saying, oh, well, if I talk to one person, only one person will hear it. It's about making that content exactly, you know, it's going to be more focused, it's going to be more purposeful, and it will, I genuinely believe in a bit of karma and, you know, law of attraction. If you know exactly who you're talking to, how you want to help them, you know, how you think you can bring value to them, it finds its way, even in that, you know, naughty algorithm that seems to make life difficult.
I think what's really interesting about what you said then is that often people think that how they behave is not a good barometer for how other people behave. So it's like you go onto Facebook and you are presented with Facebook ads, and the ads are either incredibly generic, in which case they're wallpaper, or they're incredibly hyper targeted. Are you a bald old man that wears glasses? It's like it's talking to me, so I have to click on the ad to see what it is that they're trying to position to me. And I think that most people behave that way, don't they? If you see something which looks like it's speaking directly to you, there's a certain affinity there already, and you're much more likely to action that. And yet, so many people are incapable of projecting that outward. That's how I behave. And it shows, you know, there are many different facets to this, but I know how I behave, but I'm the only one that behaves this way. Everyone else, they're just perfectly happy to see this. And they will be really excited about this blue button I've just installed on my product or whatever, even though they're clearly not going to be. So how do you go about breaking that down? You know, how do you go about explaining to people that their behavior and how they interact with things is often a really good image of how their clients are going to react, or prospects?
That's a tough question, actually. I mean, I think the first one is again, it's terrible, isn't it? But it is holding up a mirror and kind of going, well, you know, I don't know. I'll go up to that succinctly.
Kate, while you think, I might jump in on this.
Go for it. I'm trying to think of a way of saying, go on, go.
Well, first of all, people are only at the place where they are, right? Often trying to like convince somebody of something in this scenario, whether that is like in a conversation or in marketing, very ineffective, right? If you're out there being like, I'm the only person that behaves this is your internal thought process. I'm the only person who behaves this way and no one else behaves this way, because there's experts. I used air quotes for those people who are just listening on the radio and can't see my air quotes. That are telling me I need to do it this way. This is the way to get the business, right? And we're so programmed into like someone else having the answer. And I almost think it takes enough exposure to that for you to start to believe, okay, well, this person said that, and that person said that, and that person said that, and they've all made $1 million, and I'm trying to make $1 million, but none of that worked for me. So maybe, just maybe, there's something I know that they don't know that's going to help me create the program that works for me. And so like, you really need to be in that mindset, I think, in order for someone to introduce the concept to you that says, well, maybe you know something about how you consume content. And then people will be like, well, yeah, I consume it. I don't like email. I do, but like my people will like email, even though I don't like email. Okay, well, if you don't like creating email, like, how do you think that the energy flows through your email to people? You're now saying, I want to talk to email people, but I don't want to create email. Is that going to be like a very effective strategy? Or if you happen to love video, there's people out there who love video. My favorite LinkedIn post ever, I don't know who in my network did it, a poll about what is the way you like to consume content. So it was video, audio, and written, and it was 33% for all of them. It was equal distribution. And so like there are people out there who like all forms of content. What kind do you like to create? Right? Then you will speak to the people who like to consume it that way. But if you're trying to talk to people through writing, you hate writing, this is a very bad plan. So I think it's about, one, being in the right mindset to have that conversation, but two, helping people through that. Well, why do you like that video? Do you think that person looks like they like making video? Do you think you look like that when you make video? Oh, no. Okay. Again, the reflection. Okay. That's what you said, right? But
yeah. And actually I was going to pick up on this, which I was trying to sort of say, but I think not enough people do ask their audiences. It's funny what you say about the 33% thing, but also I don't, it is that classic, right? Like, how did you find me? That kind, I get so many people that say, oh, I post on social media and I'm like, but someone rang me because a friend referred them. That's what worked. But actually, when I get them to ask, they go, oh no, actually it did turn out that they did follow me. They did read my post. They did. So actually that person, did consume content in a way that they didn't realize. They thought it was just a referral and a phone call. So also I think you're absolutely right. It's like reflecting not just on what you enjoy but also what your audience, actually talking to them and asking them. And many of us don't have thousands and thousands of customers necessarily, so that we can, and even if we do, why not talk to a few of them and find out like what they do like and what really, because that gives you, it's like great feedback, right? It makes you feel good if they go, okay, I watched a video and the way you're always flapping your hands around and you talk really quickly, and it just made me think, wow, she must love creating video. I'd love to love creating video. I'm going to talk to her. So yeah, it's like, yeah, you don't know until you find out, and then you ask. And going back to that good old matrix of the enjoy versus effectiveness, just like you said, Tracy, just because email's really effective for you, but if you hate it, that will run out. Like that will, when it will get through. So, but it might be that you still do email, but you figure out a way that you do it your way and it feels good for you, and then in turn it feels good.
So, but let's pick up some of these comments, and there's a question for you at the end, Tracy. Kevin, just ask your question.
Well, I happen to know Kevin, and I know it's not really.
I know Kevin. He's on my podcast next week. James Knuckle basically has said, "Great conversation," and I'm reading these out because of the fact that we do this. This gets transformed to radio, so the people in radio can't see when the comments are up. Mark Harrison said, I dumped a like on your LinkedIn post. Please consider it my way of networking silently. Mark is our resident comedian. And he's also come up with this, which is another post, which is, I once created a post aimed at a bald guy with glasses. This is going back to what Adam said earlier on. He probably won't read it, but at least he looked distinguished ignoring it. And to Kevin Perlmutter, Tracy, you are saying we need to take a lot of advice in then use our own brains to decide what's best for us versus just following the others. Huh?
Shocker.
Weird. That's weird.
Ah,
Yes.
That sounds like hard work.
So I'm just going to repeat that. So we take a lot of advice in, then use our brains to decide what's best for us. Wow, thinking for ourselves.
Well, I even I want to just pull out what Kate said, because the Kate's example, I think maybe there's something really important here. Okay, maybe you get lots of referrals, but what if the people who are your referral partners refer you because of your content? Right? This is the pathway, right? Those people might learn about you because of your content and then be like, oh, I remember Tracy saying something about that. You're asking a question about that. Maybe I should connect the dots. This is a beautiful role for content, right? Especially if you're in the zone of feeling really confident and it's easy for you to create it, right? It doesn't have to be the person who buys, who is the person who resonates the most with your content. This is a puzzle. The content is a piece of it. And so it's not a piece that makes the whole picture on its own. When we look at all these dots and how they end up connected, how they connect for me is different than how they connect for Kate, even if we have the same dots. And so those pathways are so critical to look at and say, maybe that's not just happenstance. Maybe that's because I'm investing in these relationships this way.
We have a client that the director of strategy posted on LinkedIn the fact that they were moving office and what the office looked like, right? And someone replied to that and said, wow, I call him Adam. Adam, I haven't seen you for ages. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that you did that. We've got a framework agreement. Would you like to bid? The framework agreement was worth £500 million. Now, did that person get the 500 million framework contract because he knew the person, or did they get the 500 million framework contract because they posted about the office?
Both.
Right, that was going to be
the sum of all the parts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always give a lovely, very similar sort of example, but I say to people, you put out the picture of an onion that when cut in half looked a bit like a cat face, in it, and you'll get, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe more likes and comments, and your mum thinks it's funny, and, and you get all these people, and that, great. And then you also put out a post that literally says, I am, running a workshop on this date, sign up here. And you get 3 people that, one sends you a message asking you, when is it and how much is it and can I come along? One person books straight away and the other person says, I can't make that date, but, this sounds really interesting. And I always say, pose the question. It's the same, so that, which bit of content was better? But the truth is, exactly, we need a little bit of both. We need to trick the algorithm into reminding us that we're there and getting those few bit more of engagement and hoping that, you get a bit more visibility. But equally, once in a while, we need to actually make some sales, get those calls, get that next step along the pathway to people getting in touch. So yeah, and I think the ultimate, coming back to what your example, Tim, is if he didn't do the post, none of it would have happened.
Sure. There's a catalyst, and then there's relationship building, right? If you have a process to build relationships, then a catalyst can convert somebody very quickly. If you don't have that, then someone will be like, who are these guys? What do they do?
But he'd been through we take him through a process of explaining that you need to have a network. So he'd gone through this process of connecting to his friends. So he wasn't connected to that person beforehand. Mm-hmm. But it's that thing, which so if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
So in other words, let me just summarize a little bit. So we need to plan with purpose our content. We need to enjoy writing it. And we need to repurpose it as well. Can you give us a few examples of that, or a few best practices of that, Kate? Before we close.
Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I think ideally never go into creating a content just as a one-off. So if you can, store it, I suppose. I talk a lot about asset banks and content banks. So if you have, even having a plan in the first place means that, November next year, if you've planned November this year, you could have a look and see what you did and you hopefully get some ideas from it. So first of all, that plan can really help you, because all of the platforms you can find your content and repurpose it. Look at any content, again, making life a bit easier. Any what I call cornerstone, or content that's got really good longevity. So things like more formal videos, blogs, even emails if you write quite long ones. Look at ways that you can switch those into your social media content. Can you share it again? Can you break it down? Could you take a blog and record it as more of a video? Could you just take an element of the blog, record a video about it, and embed it into, so you've got a bit something on your YouTube channel and a little bit extra on your website as well. So it's looking at ways that we can constantly reuse that longer form content and making it shorter, and potentially the other way around as well. So I had a series of blog posts that I wrote about overcoming barriers to blogging, and I turned it into an ebook, for example. So there are lots of little ways, and quick Google and you'll find some great ways to just repurpose long form into short, and vice versa. And then finally, as I said, is having those asset banks. So knowing what you've got, having, whether it's templates, folders, things where you're storing, so that when you are having one of those days where it's completely mad and you can't think, exactly where you can find a piece of content on perhaps a particular subject, if you store it in that way, and you can use that either to inspire you or to use as.
Can I add one more quick question to that? Because
Go on,
Really quick, Tracy.
be fast. Is there an ideal length of time between a repurpose? Like, there was a guy I followed on LinkedIn who repurposed things every 3 months like clockwork, and then pretty soon I was like, okay, this is the repurpose schedule, so I don't have to follow this guy anymore. I've consumed all his content. So any quick tips on frequency of that?
I would probably, especially if it's like just straight repurposing, no reusing, I would definitely say 6 months, ideally a year. As I say, I work on like an annual sort of schedule, and I redo it over the year. However, again, knowing if that blog post had 2 views, and that you happen to unfortunately put the post out on Black Friday and no one was paying any attention to you, then maybe you could get away with it a bit more frequently.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. This has been really great. Where can we learn more? Where can we find you?
Well, definitely my main platform, my hero platform, the place I love to hang out is on LinkedIn. So do follow me, Kate Llewellyn. And then also my website address is www.thecontentconsultancy.com. You'll find all about the Content Club and my services there too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kate. We now have, and you should know that, we now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, beyond the show insights, and upcoming episodes. You may scan the QR code on screen, or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists and to you, Kate, thank you so much, and to our audience, thank you so much.